of operate. What do they have? What does that mean for the Mossad? That means hundreds of thousands, not tens of thousands, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of individuals who basically show only a commitment to Israel national security or interest in Israel's safety. They don't need to go out of their way to collect information. They do none of this. All they have been asked, or they are asked to do is, you hear something, say something. They are professionals. They are doctors, engineers, carpenters, artists, singers, wherever they may be. And they live in their communities. But if they hear something that may have any relevance, that may be connected somehow to Israel in one form or another, they will inform somebody, and that information will go to the right place. So open source intelligence is when you go to the street and you listen to the merchants, what they are talking about. When you read the newspapers and try to decipher from the newspaper, what information can you gather from that? We are doing better, but we are certainly not there yet when it comes to utilizing to the fullest extent the open source information that is available. And moreover, instead of having this information coming from the bottom up that is collected and is sent to analyze at the higher echelon, by and large is the higher echelon that is filtering the information down the line. And in many cases, it does not have the kind of relevance that it should have for the operatives on the ground. And the other point that I want to mention to you, which is really quite, I think, probably the most important in this regard, and that is the level of cooperation with Pakistan and when it comes to intelligence. You know, as I said to you earlier, today, if we are going to find a political solution to Afghanistan, that it is going to give us some kind of a face-saving way out, it will have to be done only through full and complete cooperation with Pakistan. And make no mistake about it. Pakistan has its own agenda in this conflict. And it will continue to have its own agenda in this conflict for as long as it takes. Pakistan is fixated on India. They want to maintain their pipelines open to the various insurgencies, the various terrorist groups, because from their perspective, this is what they need, and they want to make sure that any political development takes place in Afghanistan, they will have a say in it, if not control what's going on in Afghanistan. They have in the past, and they continue to this very day, to provide information to the Taliban insurgents. The Pakistani intelligence community, the ISI, is known, and in fact, they didn't even deny it. They work pretty much like a double agent with the United States. And there is absolutely no way we are going to be able now, if we are to focus on counter-terrorism, and Pakistan is going to be in the forefront of this campaign, we are going to need to work with Afghanistan, with Pakistan that is, very closely, and we must be able to develop a relationship that will in fact has, at last, but one that is credible, believable, because otherwise we are not going to be able to end this conflict in a manner that can in the least satisfy our basic requirement before we can leave Afghanistan. So we have to understand this principle. That is, the United States, which has been supporting Pakistan for so long now, financially and otherwise, is going to have to assess not only what's happening in Afghanistan, but exactly assess the relationship, the bilateral relationship between the United States and Pakistan. And to that end, a number of premises will have to be established. That is, the level of cooperation specifically on intelligence, but also making sure that Pakistan does not betray that kind of understanding. But it will not do so as long as it continues to fear, as long as it continues to be fixated on India. Which means really for the United States is not merely working an arrangement with Pakistan about intelligence and the level of cooperation, but it's going to have to disabuse the Pakistanis that India is the main menace. And in fact, get involved in some kind of a dialogue between India and Pakistan to alleviate the pressure from the Pakistani government. Or else they will not cooperate under any circumstances. This is a major problem for the United States. That is, if the United States, that is, if the Obama administration, going through this assessment, decides that we are going to have to focus on counterterrorism, not counterinsurgency, and seek a political solution to Afghanistan, then we have to begin to negotiate in earnest with the Pakistani government about a joint effort, a joint program whereby we can bring a conclusion, a political solution to Afghanistan in which Pakistan would want to have a say, not just for the present, but for the future, and be able now to focus our effort with the Pakistani forces to deal with Al-Qaeda, specifically in the north, which is in the area of what is called the Waziristan area, where almost everyone knows that this is where the Al-Qaeda is located. The other point, that I want to make is a very, very, I think it's critical in this sense, and then I'll get to, what else can be done. That is, if we are going to make counterterrorism the focal of our campaign in the future, obviously we're going to have to focus our intelligence into entirely different areas. And that is, we're going to have to spend more time and energy and resources on human intelligence. Yes, we're going to have to work with the Pakistani government very, very closely, specifically with the ISI. Yes, we're going to have to make better use of open sources. Yes, we're going to make much better use of our electronic devices and collect information. But all of that can come to produce the kind of result that we want, provided this effort is done cooperatively with the Pakistani government, if that's where we're going to focus. But I must submit to you today that if the United States, if the Obama administration this week or next week decide that we are going to continue our campaign in connection with counterinsurgency in Afghanistan, I'm afraid to say that we are going to continue to invest a tremendous amount of blood and treasure without really getting the kind of result that we can hope for. Not to speak of the fact that we are trying to go into a country that no power ever has been able to subdue, and trying to introduce it to such a country, our own values, our own tradition, be that political and otherwise or moral. That is not going to work. Nor does the United States has the responsibility and the obligation to go to these type of countries, to these kind of places, and try to change their way of life. Which means we must find that political solution, and we must be honest with the American public and tell them the truth. Tell them the truth. I think the WikiLeaks cables tell us quite a bit how much deceit has been taking place. We have to be honest with the American public and say, this is a war that's going to be won. And those generals, including General Petraeus, who thinks it can be won, and how can you blame a general? The military people are to fight wars and they want to win them. And it's probably for the same reason why Senator McCain is willing to invest more money and more blood to continue this fight, which is probably not going to lead anywhere. So if we're going to stay there 2 or 3 more years, we have to lower our sight in terms of our objectives, what is going to be our mission, develop the kind of mechanism, including intelligence mechanism, to serve that mission in a much more comprehensive, direct, and effective way, and begin to establish an exit strategy, but not one that is going to be advertised in terms of we have to withdraw a certain number of forces by July 11 of 2011. I mean, these kind of information is extraordinarily counterproductive, because for a Taliban or for somebody else who is listening to this, well, they say the United States has no stamina, no capacity, no ability, and all we have to do is wait. And you know what? That's all. They have plenty of time to wait. They will wait 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it takes, they will wait, because they know the United States does not have the stamina to continue a campaign such as this, specifically when people like myself and scores and hundreds, thousands like me are saying this is not a winnable campaign. And finally, I think the point that has to be made, the United States today remains the single most powerful nations. Some people argue about, well, China is rising, Turkey is rising, Brazil is rising, but let's make no mistake about it. The United States singularly remain formidable power. There is not a single country